One who knows something through direct experience has no need for beliefs. One who knows something through direct experience has no need for beliefs. The dissolving of conditioned beliefs is not a function of intellectual understanding, but rather of 4 experiential transformative steps. The dissolving of conditioned beliefs. So when he's referring to conditioned beliefs, what are those conditioned beliefs? Yeah? What are the conditioned beliefs that human beings have, right? I don't have to say what are your conditioned beliefs, because there are conditioned beliefs that human beings have, that we share with all of humanity, don't we? Yeah. And what is the core conditioned belief that we share with all of humanity?
That you are your thoughts.
Yeah, that you are your thoughts, and that if you are your thoughts, then one of those thoughts is that you're your body.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and one of those thoughts is that you are this identity that we call a person or a personality, right? Yeah, we share that belief with the rest of humanity, right? Everybody's walking around on the planet being a body, aren't they? Everybody's walking around on the planet being a person, aren't they? Everybody's walking around on the planet living in time. Even though many of us know the truth about time, you know, time is a concept. Time is not a reality. Time is something that has been created for us to function in time, right? But nonetheless, you know, even though many of us know the truth about time, we still have to function in time, don't we? Yeah. So it seems pretty real, even for those of us who know it's not real. Yeah, because by agreement, everybody's operating in time, right? So we must function in time, although it's possible to know that time actually doesn't exist. In the same way, we must function as a physical body, even if we know we're not a physical body. We must function as a physical body. There's no alternative to that. You wake up in the morning, you wake up in a physical body. And yet, one of the core teachings in the wisdom teachings is that this is not the case. That what we are is not actually physical, and we are not a physical body. So it's a belief that's shared by most of humanity. And then the person. Yeah, even though you may come to know as an intellectual understanding that you're not this entity, this psychological entity, that you're not this person, even though you may come to know that as an intellectual understanding, yeah, you'll still operate, you'll still function as a person in the world. Yeah, when it's time to sign your name to something, you sign the name of that person. When it's time to get your driver's license renewed, you get a picture of the body that's the body of that person that's on the driver's license. That's your identification, right? So this is so completely agreed upon, so completely considered to be the truth, that it's not dealt with as a belief. It's not dealt with as a belief, right? That the understandings that we might develop in terms of the idea that we're not a physical body, we're not a person or a persona, these understandings that we may develop won't in and of themselves dissolve the belief. Won't in and of themselves have you actually experience yourself as awareness. No. What will keep playing, the programming that will keep playing, is the program that you are your body, that you are a person, that you're living in time. That's the program that will keep playing, because that's the conditioning, that's the orientation that you were conditioned to, like the rest of humanity. Right? But it plays in the program that runs. So the understanding even of that, won't have the fact that you live and function as a person. It won't change that. Your understanding won't change that you live and you function as a person. And then what happens, what I have experienced is that people come to me and they say that they don't know what's going on. They want to be free of this person business. They want to be free of the burden of being a person, because it is a burden. To be a person is a burden. It's a burden because as a person you carry a personal history, don't you? Yeah, and that personal history for all of us involves trauma, doesn't it? Yeah, and that personal history involves living in time, and that personal history involves having a body, and the body's getting old, or the body's dying, or the body's sick, or the body's, losing its attractiveness, right? And so these beliefs remain, and they remain in programming, they remain in neural patterns, and they continue to play. There are activities that you can consciously and knowingly participate in, that if you participate in these activities, that these beliefs will start to dissipate. They'll start to lose their power. They'll start to fall away on their own. Because this is very important. Because people complain about not experiencing who they actually are, don't they? Yeah, people complain. They're frustrated because they're not experiencing who they are. They want that experience of who they are. Actually, if you really look closely, it's not so much that they want that experience of who they are, right? It's they want a certain experience that they think is the experience they would have if they were being themselves. Isn't it true? Yeah, you want a certain experience is what you want. Yeah, people want to get high. People want to experience being unburdened, right? They want to experience. Every once in a while, people have an experience in which, for some reason, there is a gap in the programming, or for some reason the programming relaxes, and there's this sense of freedom, this sense of fulfillment, this sense of happiness that's kind of a natural, spontaneous experience, right? This sense of being at ease, this sense of there not being any burden that's being carried. Yeah, and when people have that experience, they notice it, and that's what they want. They want that experience, which will guarantee that you cannot have the experience of who you are, because the experience of who you are is not an experience. Because the experience of who you are does not have a specific content to it, like the one that you want to have again, like that. Doesn't have specific content to it. So in order to get out of that dilemma, in order to get free from the misunderstanding, not only about who you are, but the misunderstanding about what it would be like to be what you actually are. Most people have a misunderstanding about what it would be like to be what you actually are. And how do you know? How do I know that's true, right? Because if you're complaining that you're not experiencing who you actually are, and you're never not experiencing who you actually are, right? Then obviously you must have a misunderstanding about what the experience of who you actually are is, right? Because you have it tied into, it has a certain appearance. It feels a certain way. It looks a certain way. When in reality, what we're trying to get across here is that the awareness that's aware of what's happening is always here, is always the same, and never changes. And that's the truth, and that's who it is that we are. The awareness is always here, never changes. Right? So if you're after a particular feeling, for example, that you have associated with being who you are, experiencing the truth of yourself, right? Even if that feeling were to occur, it's not the feeling that's you, it's the awareness of the feeling. You follow this? Even if that feeling were to occur, it's not the feeling, it's the awareness of the feeling that is the truth of who you are. It's not, and the reason that this confusion exists is because What the mind does is it says, okay, you know, for me to be who I am looks a certain way. For me to notice or see or be aware of what I am means that first I have to recognize it as something that exists in the field of experience. So I have to objectify it, right? The only problem is that who you and I are is the one thing that has no objective reality. There is no objective reality of who you are. There's only a subjective reality of who you are. And that's the awareness. But the brain and the mind have been conditioned to only recognize and understand to be real that which is objective, that which shows up in the field of awareness, yes? Yeah, so when we hear these things, we start to want to identify who we are as something, as some object that we can see or some object that we can recognize. This is why we consider ourselves to be a body, because we can see this. You know, we can recognize this. This has qualities that make it real for us in terms of it having mass, right? And weighing something, showing up in a form, right? So it's easy to identify with something that has a form that has mass and shows up, you know, that we, especially given that the experience that we are conditioned to have is that we are in here, looking out from in here. It's very difficult for people to grasp the idea that that's actually not true. It's very difficult for people to grasp the idea, even in light of the evidence. Because as I have said here, I don't know about you, but I can be aware of this entire body. And if I can be aware of this entire body, then the awareness that I am is aware of the body, not in the body. The body's in the awareness. That's all you have. That's the only exercise you have to do to know what the evidence says about awareness and the body. Of course, even when you do that and you see that, and you can take that further, by the way, right, that not only are you not the body, but you can take that further and you can actually get to the point where you see that the entire universe, right, the entire universe is in your awareness. It's in your awareness. Your body's in your awareness. The world's in your awareness. The universe is in your awareness, is in awareness. So, we don't want to just have the understanding about these things. The understanding about these things has a certain value, right? It allows us to have conviction. It allows us to see things as they are, even though it's conceptual. What you want is you want to get that conceptual understanding to shift into, right, that's who you are, not what you understand. It's who you are, not what you understand. That's what we want to have occur. The difficulty and the complexity of it in regard to this teachings and practices is that it's already happened. We just can't stop trying to make what's already happened happen. We just can't stop trying, can we? Yeah, it's already happened. So this isn't about making something happen. This is about noticing, maintaining a consistent awareness of, and in the end, being that which you are looking for. Being that. That's the only knowledge that's ever going to be available to you about who you are, is in the being of it. You can't know it as an objective reality because it's not an objective reality. You can't know it. The only knowing of it is the being of it. Right? And so this is what Hal Eisen came up with. And for those of you who watch this on YouTube, you may want to check Hal Eisen out and his core wisdom teachings. You can look him up on the internet. But it's worth paying attention to, because he says the dissolving of conditioned beliefs is not a function of intellectual understanding. You can't get to the experience of being who you are through an understanding. You can't get to the experience of what you are through an understanding. And that's a mistake that a lot of people get. They think if I understand this enough, if I study this enough, and my understandings are deep enough, that in and of itself will be the way that the realization occurs. And it's easy to think that way because the understanding does have power. You know, if you watch teachers interact with students, you can see that the interaction has power. Students do see things through understanding. But seeing is not the same as being. And if you've been a student of these teachings and practices, this should be gold. This should be heard by you to be very, very valuable. The first step is that you've got to recognize who you are. You've got to recognize who you are. So the recognition of who you are is very simple and very immediate. That awareness that you say you're aware is actually aware of you. And that awareness, which is here, which is real, is consciousness. And consciousness is you, and consciousness is all there is. So the first step is the recognition of awareness. Are you here? How do you know you're here? I'm aware. Oh, okay. Oh, therefore, if you know you're here because of awareness, you've recognized awareness. It's as simple as that. A lot of people think that the recognition of awareness is the whole story. A lot of people think the recognition of awareness is enlightenment. No, it's not. No, and recognition of awareness is not enlightenment. Enlightenment is a way of being. It's not a recognition. It's a way of being that occurs in time. You live as an enlightened being. You don't just see enlightenment. Seeing enlightenment doesn't make any difference. What makes a difference is that you're living enlightenment. That's why I call my new website Being Enlightened. That you're living in. Instead of waiting for enlightenment to happen to you, live as an enlightened being. If you live as an enlightened being, you're enlightened. Right? If you live as an enlightened being, but you see, the thing is that a lot of people will, what they'll do with that is they'll say, yeah, but I don't feel enlightened. See what I'm saying? Yeah, but I don't feel enlightened. I still have times when when there's fear there. I still have times when there's frustration there. I still have times when there's confusion there, right? And so the mistaken idea that enlightenment has a particular form to it, again, can be in the way. When in reality, well, all we're talking about is you now know yourself as the awareness of what's happening instead of what's happening. That's all. So if you say, oh, well, okay, if I know I'm enlightened and I feel frustration, right? Feeling frustration is not a problem unless you identify with the frustration. Unless you think you're frustrated, now it's a problem. It's interesting because what happens is when you go to speak from where he's speaking, if you're really listening to the speaking, you'll hear the contradictions are all over the place. I really knew what was happening. Okay, I really know what was happening. She was making me angry. Already you're lost. Because that's not what's happening. Nobody has the power to make you angry. See? So you have to, that's why I say here, you have to go back and listen to your speaking. Your speaking is where the lies live. You know what I mean? Your speaking is where the lies live. It would be useful for you to record yourself, you know, when you're having interactions like this with people, right? Put your phone in your pocket and turn the recorder on. Yeah. Then go back and listen to the interaction. You'll hear yourself lying. You got to be lying to be upset. You've got to be lying to be upset. You've got to think you're something you're not to be upset. If you practice these things consistently, right, and you really are convinced and you really dedicate yourself to these teachings, and you will find yourself being awake. You'll just find yourself being awake because you'll find yourself in the middle of this actually really seeing it as it is. Really seeing it as it is and really recognizing that to not get involved with it means to not get involved with the thinking activity that's going on during this interaction. Because if you do, in that thinking activity, you will be lost. You'll be lost in the idea that you are the person who's being made defensive. Once that happens, then the world that puts you in is a world of suffering. It's not so important that you pay attention to the content of it as it is that you realize that you're in the thinking activity. You're operating inside the thinking activity, right? You're not operating present. That's what presence is. Presence means you're there with what's happening, not in your head thinking about what's happening, because if you're in your head thinking about what's happening, you're living in that world about it. You're not living in the reality of it, you're living in that world about it. And when you live in that world about it, suffering must happen. Because the world you're living in when you're living in that world about it is a world in which it's happening to you, as you said. When you say to me, how do you behave in that situation? It's kind of like you're asking me, what program will run for you? Right?
Yeah, I need that program.
And then in that situation, the reality of it is that if I am present, no program will run from me. Programs may run, but my awareness and my presence is such that I see it for what it is, and therefore I don't get involved with that. I stay with this. I stay with this. I stay here with this in terms of understanding that I can be present to what's happening and allow the immediate intelligence, natural intelligence, allow the immediate natural intelligence to respond, rather than identifying with my thinking about it, and that's where, oh, she's making me angry, and all of that mishigas, That's the whole thing. So I want to go on here and talk about the second step. The first step is the recognition of awareness, right? The second step is to abide in the direct experience of knowingly being the open, limitless, ever-present awareness that is your true nature. Direct experience of knowingly being, allowing all identification with the indoctrinated illusions of being a time-bound, finite mind-body, allowing, not trying to control anything, right? Allowing the thinking to be whatever it is. Allowing the physical sensations to be whatever they are, right? Allowing all identification with the indoctrinated illusions. So indoctrinated illusions are conditioned beliefs. It's the same thing. Indoctrinated illusions, conditioned beliefs. To the extent that you can recognize that you're the awareness of what you're thinking, not the thinker of your thoughts. Clearly, openly being aware of knowing who you are. And because you know who you are, you know you're not the thinker of your thoughts, you know you're the awareness of thinking. If you're being the awareness that you are, which you already are, so you don't have to become it. Right. If you're being the awareness that you already are, the being of that awareness sees things as they are, sees what's happening, sees the identification that's occurring in the programming that you're a person being threatened. Sees the programming running that has it that you're a person being threatened. The awareness of that is what you are. You don't do anything. Awareness is not doing anything. No, it's not doing it. It's just being present to what's so. And what is so? In an absolute sense, everything that's happening is happening because of the will of God. Everything that's happening is coming from the source. But we're not talking about in an absolute sense here. We're talking about it in a functional reality, in a practical sense. But it's a good thing you bring that up, because those two things seem to be at odds. But they're not at odds. It appears at this level of relativity in the time-space realm that you are a doer. It appears that that's the case, and you must therefore operate consistent with the appearance that's occurring. And so you do. And what we're talking about here is how to do that effectively, right? So that what's not true can fall away and the truth can stand, is what we're talking about doing. Now, in an absolute sense, that's all happening from the source. You have no say-so about any of it.
Okay, bye.
Sorry, but what I can tell you is that the conversations we're having here has to do with the recognition that in a functional, practical, everyday reality, right, that it's necessary to have these ways and means to deal with what's happening. In an absolute sense, none of it matters, right? But you're not experiencing the absolute sense of it. We're experiencing the relative sense of it. We're in the relative world. We're in the time-space reality. We're in the functional reality in which, whether you know you're a body or not, you have to keep being one in this world, right? You have to keep identifying as one. Whether you know you're a person or not, you have to keep being one in this world. You don't have a choice about it, right? So given that that's the case, it's from there that I speak. When I say that, to abide in the direct experience is knowingly being the open, limitless, ever-present awareness that is your true nature, to knowingly be that open, limited awareness. What does that take to do that? It's easy to say it, right? But what does that take to do that? What does it take to do that? The first thing it takes is you've got to be able to pay attention, don't you? Yeah, you got to be able to pay attention. You've got to be able to recognize yourself as awareness in real time. You've got to be able to recognize yourself as awareness, that which is aware of the thinking, the feeling, the physical sensations, and the behaviors, that which is aware of the whole thing. And the only way you can notice awareness is that you have to attend, you have to pay attention. You have to be aware of your attention, you have to pay attention. And that's meditation. That's the practice of meditation. And in meditation with less pressure than you normally experience in life, in meditation with less pressure than you normally experience in life, right? Because you're not engaged in meditation. You're not engaged with life, right? You're sitting still. You're not involved with anything. You're sitting still. You're not involved with anything. So in meditation, it becomes possible to practice this in a situation in which there's less heat on you, less tendency to experience that you're being threatened by anything when you're sitting there meditating, right? So then what? So then you can now notice, okay, so if I sit here and I don't move and I let the body relax, it's easier for me to notice that I'm in thinking. So I bring my attention to the breath and the body. I'm aware of the breath and the body. And by being aware of the breath and the body and by coming out of the thinking activity, the possibility of noticing the awareness is here now, more easy to see that it's the case than when thinking is going on, because when thinking is going on, part of what happens when thinking is going on is I get thought into being a person. See, what happens when thinking is going on is I get thought into being a person, right? But it's not seen to be so. When it's seen to be so, then I'm seeing it for what it really is, aren't I? That's all that has to happen, is to be aware of what there is to be aware of. What is there to be aware of? What there is to be aware of is that there is always a program running, and that program is generating the idea you have of who you are. It's generating your idea about what's true. It's generating your idea about reality and time and space and the past and the future and all that stuff. It's generating all that stuff all the time. So just to recognize that to be in the thinking activity is to be lost in the world of the thinking activity. And then to notice that when I have my attention on the breath and the body, all of that trouble is not there. All of that concern is not there. All that fear is not there. And if I spend as much time as possible in this being aware of the breath and the body mode, what's going on in the thinking activity in the mind starts to naturally calm down, because I'm not playing with it. I'm not interacting with it. It starts to just calm down just by being there and not interacting with it. And as it calms down, it becomes easier for me to see what's going on, because there's less interference, there's less noise. So the practice, relaxing the body, calming the mind, and this calming the mind and relaxing the body over time is something that develops. The ability to calm the mind and relax the body develops over time because you're practicing doing it. Simple as that. And then it's easier to see what's going on. And when you see what's going on and you see it for what it is, that's all that's necessary. If you see it for what it is, that's all that's necessary. Because if you see it for what it is, you're seeing it from who you are. If you're seeing it for what it is, you're seeing it from who you are. And when you're seeing it from who you are, there's a natural process in which the illusions of who you've been being as a person or a body or as something spontaneously unravel and fall away in the light of the truth. You see? When from the light of the truth, when from awareness you see what's not true, it can't maintain its existence because it doesn't exist. It is an appearance. And so these things that seem to be real will spontaneously unravel and fall away in the light of the truth. That's one of the things that I have been harping on here for a while now. This is as simple as consistently knowing who you are and consistently paying attention in such a way where you can recognize yourself as the awareness of what's going on, not what's going on. And that's the light of the truth. The awareness of what's going on is the light of the truth. And when the awareness of what's going on as the light of the truth is shining on what's going on, it sees it for what it is. It sees that you're not the body. It sees that you're not the person. In real time, it sees it for what it is. And because it sees it for what it is, it doesn't get involved in that. And by not getting involved in that, you're free to meet the circumstances you find yourself in realistically. You follow that? Yeah, you're free to meet the circumstances you find yourself in realistically. You're free to be what you are, which is unconditional love. And in that, as unconditional love, when you're encountering people that conflict arises, right? As unconditional love, you can be present to that with no problem. No problem, because the threat isn't there anymore. The threat isn't there anymore. You're not threatened. So I'll quote the Course in Miracles again. The threat isn't there anymore. You're not threatened. The summary statement in the beginning of the Course in Miracles, that which is real cannot be threatened. The threat isn't there anymore. You're not threatened. That which is real cannot be threatened. That which is not real doesn't exist. You don't have to protect something that's not real, right? Now, it may take a while for you to get used to not having to protect it, but nonetheless, it's true. You can have experiences where conflict arises in relationship to somebody, who you're dealing with, right? And you're not experiencing any conflict. You're not experiencing any need to defend yourself or be aggressive. You're not experiencing any of that. So when the conflict arises, this is what this is saying. When the conflict arises, you see it for what it is. You see the programming in your brain and your mind that's playing, right, as it relates to the conflict, right? But you see the whole thing for what it is. And so you don't have to get involved. You can simply be there with what's happening. And you don't have to act out what's going on in your head. You can simply be there with what's happening. And what you'll find is that a lot of the time, that things resolve themselves. Just because you didn't get involved. Even if your behavior is one in which you do take action, see, because I want to be clear with you, I'm not talking about passivity all the time. Even in which your situation, even if the situation is one in which you do take action, that action can be taken without your being involved. In terms of thinking it through, figuring it out, operating out of your emotions, right? No, rather just responding, naturally responding, spontaneously responding to what's going on. It's so easy that if it happens, you won't believe it happened. If you find yourself in a situation where you're in conflict with another human being and it just disappears, what happened? Because you didn't get involved, you didn't engage with it, you just let it play. You let it play over here and not act it out. You let it play over there, and if they act it out, that's fine. It's not a threat. It's not a threat. Capiche? All right, have a good day.